The K9 didn't bark. He didn't growl. He just scratched the same floorboard until his claws bled. And then something underneath the wood scratched back. So why was there movement under a house that had been empty for 10 years? And why did the dog suddenly refuse to leave? It started as a routine call. One of those nothing calls, the kind dispatch throws at you when the night is quiet and paperwork is loud. A neighbor reported a strange sound coming from a condemned house on Harlow Street. Not voices, not music, just a rhythmic scraping, like furniture being dragged. Over and over, always in the same place. Officer Elena Morales had heard 1,000 exaggerations from anxious neighbors. Raccoons, squirrels, wind. But her partner that night wasn't the type to be fooled. Because K9 Apollo, a Belgian Malinois with nerves like steel cable, did something Elena had never seen in 3 years of working with him. The moment they stepped onto the porch, Apollo froze. His ears lifted. His nose worked the air like it was tasting the darkness. And then he pulled hard enough to yank Elena's shoulder forward, toward the front door. But that wasn't the strange part. The strange part was the sound inside the house. Because it didn't stop when they arrived. It got faster. And if you stay with me until the end, you'll understand why what they found under that floor didn't just solve a case. It rewired an entire town's idea of what missing really means. Elena Morales wasn't new to fear. She was new to ignoring it. She was 34, a patrol officer reassigned to K9 support after a career that had left her with a permanent tension between her eyes, like she was always bracing for impact. Her routine was simple. Coffee that tasted like burnt rubber, boots that never quite dried, and a radio that never stayed silent for long. Elena didn't talk much at the station. Not because she was cold, because she learned that the job takes anything you love and uses it as leverage. A year ago, she'd handled a missing person call that ended in a way she never discussed. She kept working, kept showing up, kept breathing. But one thing kept her tethered to something good. Apollo. Apollo was all focus and muscle, lean, fast, and intelligent in a way that didn't feel like obedience. It felt like judgment. He'd been trained in apprehension, tracking, and scent work. He could follow a trail across asphalt, over a creek, and through a crowded street without losing it. And when Apollo locked onto a scent, it wasn't just finding, it was knowing. There were officers who treated K9S like equipment. Elena never did. She talked to Apollo like he was a partner, because on the worst nights, he was the only one who didn't lie with words. And tonight, Apollo was telling her something with his body. Something was wrong. The house sat hunched behind dead shrubs and a crooked fence. Boards over the windows, a condemned sign sun-bleached into near invisibility. Harlow Street locals called it the Wicker House because the original owner had been a furniture maker who disappeared decades ago. Kids dared each other to touch the porch steps. Adults crossed the street rather than walk past it. Elena parked at the curb, headlights washing the front door in pale light. Apollo's paws at the porch, and he stopped. A low whine vibrated in his throat, quiet, unwilling. Elena felt her grip tighten on the leash. Easy, she whispered. We check the house. We clear it. We go home. Apollo didn't blink. Then, scrape, scrape, scrape. It came from inside, muffled by rot and plaster. Elena's hand went to her flashlight. Then her holster. She tried the door. It wasn't locked, which was the first red flag. The second was the smell. Not just dust. Not just mildew. Something else, thin, stale, and wrong. Like air that had been trapped too long in a place that didn't deserve to breathe. Apollo stepped in first. His body went rigid, tail straight, nose low. He moved like he was reading a map no one else could see. And as Elena followed him into the dark, the scraping sound stopped. The house became silent in that way that makes you hear your own pulse. Then Apollo turned his head sharply toward the living room, and he pulled. The living room was a graveyard of furniture outlines, shadows where things used to be. Moonlight slipped through a crack in the boarded window, laying a thin stripe across the floor. Apollo walked straight to that stripe and began to scratch, not playful, not impatient, focused, intentional. His claws tore at dust and splinters, throwing little bursts of debris into the air. Elena knelt beside him. Apollo, what do you have? He scratched harder. That's when she noticed something. The floorboard wasn't just scratched. It was cleaner, like something had been dragged across it recently, wiping away dust in a long arc. A path. Elena's flashlight traced it to a corner, where the baseboard looked slightly newer than the rest. She swallowed. You know that feeling when your brain tries to protect you by offering simple explanations? Rats settling wood. Teenagers messing around. But Apollo's body language didn't belong to a rodent. It belonged to a find. And then a sound, not from above, from below. A soft thump like a knee hitting wood. Elena froze so hard her joints felt locked. Apollo stopped scratching, head cocked, and the floorboard moved just a millimeter. A subtle lift, like something beneath it exhaled. Elena's voice came out thin. Dispatch, Unit 12. I'm at the Harlow Street property. Possible occupied structure. Static. Then, Unit 12 confirmed. Occupied. Elena stared at the floor like it might open its mouth. I don't know yet, she said. Send backup. Apollo started scratching again, frantic now. His nails made a sound like a match being struck 100 times. And underneath, something scratched back. Elena backed away 1 step. 2, keeping Apollo close. Leash wrapped tight around her wrist. Her flashlight beam shook as she scanned the room. No movement upstairs. No shadows in the doorway. Only that spot on the floor, acting like it had a heartbeat. Elena's mind snapped through possibility. A hidden crawl space. A trapped animal. Or someone hiding. Someone who didn't want to be found. She forced herself to breathe, then crouched and pressed her palm to the wood. The floor was cold, but there was something else. A faint vibration, like a distant motor or a fan. Airflow. She leaned closer, and that stale smell thickened. Not decay. Not exactly. More like breath that had been recycled. Elena whispered, if someone's under there, you need to make a sound. I'm police. Silence. Apollo's ears flattened. His scratch slowed into something measured, almost pleading. Elena tilted her head, listening. Then she heard it. So faint she thought she imagined it. A child voice? Or maybe just air moving through a narrow gap. And then, clear as a nail-tapping glass, 3 knocks from beneath. Tap, tap, tap. Elena's skin went electric. She keyed her radio again. Dispatch, upgrade. I need EMS stage. Now. Static swallowed her words and spit them back out. And somewhere deep inside the house, a board creaked upstairs. Elena lifted her flashlight. Apollo stopped scratching. His gaze snapped toward the hallway. Locked, predatory. Someone else was in the house. Above them. Listening. Elena did what cops are trained to do when the situation turns unreal. She simplified. 1 threat at a time. She led Apollo back into the hallway, keeping the living room in her peripheral vision. The upstairs creak didn't repeat. No footsteps. Just that heavy, suffocating stillness. Elena raised her voice, louder now. Police, if anyone is inside, make yourself known. Nothing. She returned to the living room, kneeling again at the scratched floorboard. Apollo resumed immediately, claws finding the seam like he'd done this 100 times. Elena ran her flashlight along the edges. There, barely visible, were tiny pry marks. Fresh. Someone had been opening this, closing it, making it look untouched. Her heart beat once hard. She pulled a small crowbar from her trunk kit, standard issue for forced entry, and slid it into the gap. Wood protested, then gave a little. A thin line of darkness opened, and the smell that came out, it wasn't rot. It was human, sweat, old breath, fear. Elena paused just a second, because her instincts were screaming this is not normal. She pried again. The board lifted with a groan. Apollo let out a single, sharp bark, like a warning shot. And from the darkness below, a pair of eyes reflected her flashlight. Wide, wet, alive. A face, small, grimy, terrified, pressed close to the opening. A girl, maybe 9, maybe 10. Her lips moved without sound. Elena leaned down. Hey, can you hear me? What's your name? The girl's voice came out like air escaping a punctured tire. Please, she whispered, don't let him hear. Elena's blood turned cold. Who? Elena asked, even though she already knew the answer to that kind of sentence. The girl swallowed and pointed upward with a shaking finger. Backup arrived fast, 2 patrol units, then Sergeant Weller, then a detective Elena recognized, Detective Mark Rayner, the kind of man who spoke softly because he didn't like wasting sound. EMS stage at the curb. Flashlights cut through the house like searching fingers. Elena kept her body between the opening and the room, shielding the girl. Apollo sat at her heel, vibrating with alertness, eyes flicking to every doorway. Detective Rayner crouched beside Elena. You found her? Elena nodded once. She says there's someone else here. Rayner's jaw tightened. He looked at the hole like it was a crime scene and a confession at the same time. Can you climb out? Elena asked the girl. The child shook her head quickly. He locks it. Elena swallowed. Okay, we'll get you out. Rayner signaled to the officer. Clear upstairs. Quiet. 2 officers moved toward the staircase, boots careful. Apollo's had snapped to the ceiling again. Then, a sound. Not a creak, not a footstep. A click, sharp and deliberate, like a latch. From the kitchen, Rayner's eyes lifted. He raised his hand, palm open, freezing everyone. Silence. Then a soft, dragging shuffle. Someone trying not to be heard, failing. Elena's grip tightened on Apollo's leash. Rayner whispered, Morales, keep the kid covered. Elena nodded, but Apollo didn't care about orders. His body leaned toward the sound, muscles coiling. The shuffle stopped. Then came a voice, male, low, almost conversational. You shouldn't be here. It wasn't shouted. That made it worse. It came from the kitchen doorway, where a tall figure stood just inside the shadows. A man in a work jacket, holding something long in his hand. Not quite a gun, not quite a tool. In the flashlight beam, it gleamed like metal. Apollo growled, a sound Elena rarely heard from him. The man's eyes dropped to the dog, and he smiled, like he'd been expecting this. The next second stretched like film slowed down. Rayner raised his weapon. Police, drop it. The man didn't move. He tilted his head. You found my door. Elena felt the girl below whimper. Apollo's paws shifted. Ready? Elena's brain did the math. Cramped house, unknown weapon, child in a hole. One wrong move, and everything breaks. The man's gaze drifted to the opening in the floor. His smile disappeared. Then his expression hardened into something ugly and possessive. You opened it, he said, voice flattening. That wasn't yours. Rayner stepped forward half a pace. Hands where I can see them. Now, the man's grip tightened on the metal object. In the beam, it looked like a heavy pry bar. Or a pipe. He took a step. Apollo lunged. Elena let the leash slide just enough. Controlled release. Because sometimes a dog is the only thing fast enough to interrupt tragedy. Apollo launched like a missile, teeth flashing. The man swung. A sickening clang as metal met not skull, but Apollo's shoulder. Apollo yelped just once, then clamped down on the man's forearm with a force that made the man gasp. Rayner fired a single shot into the ceiling, warning and command. Drop it. The man screamed, tried to yank free, stumbled backward into the kitchen wall. 2 officers tackled him. The pipe hit the floor. Apollo held on until Elena shouted his name. Apollo! Out! He released immediately, obedient even in pain, then backed Elena's side, chest heaving, eyes still locked on the man. Elena knelt, hands shaking as she checked Apollo's shoulder. He was hurt, not broken, but there was blood. And Elena felt something rise in her throat. Rage, relief, gratitude, too big to name. Rayner cuffed the man while the officers read him rights. The man didn't resist now. He just stared at the opening in the floor like it was a stolen treasure. And then he said something that made the room go colder than it already was. She's not the first. Elena's stomach dropped. Rayner's voice was tight. What did you say? The man smiled again, small and poisonous. I said, she's not the first. Here's what most people don't realize about dogs like Apollo. A human might walk into that house and smell dust, mold, old wood. But a working K9 doesn't smell a room. He smells layers of time. Dogs have up to hundreds of millions of scent receptors, and the part of their brain that processes smell is proportionally far larger than ours. That means AK9 can detect faint human odor trapped in cracks, soaked into boards, and pushed upward by airflow, like that subtle vibration Elena felt under her hand. If there was a hidden space under that floor, Apollo didn't guess. He knew. And now the question wasn't how the girl got there. The question was, how many other scents had Apollo been reacting to that didn't belong to her? They brought in forensic units before sunrise. Floodlights outside turned Harlow Street into a stage. Neighbors gathered behind tape, whispering like the town had suddenly remembered how to pray. They cut the padlock mechanism inside the floor opening and helped the girl up with trembling care. When she emerged, she looked smaller than Elena expected, like fear had shrunk her. EMS wrapped her in a blanket. Elena crouched to her level. You're safe now. What's your name? The girl blinked hard, as if her eyes didn't trust light. Maya, she whispered. Maya Danner. Rayner's head snapped up. Elena felt the name strike something in her memory. Danner. Missing poster on the grocery store board. A case that had been on the news for 11 days. A child taken from a park in broad daylight. Elena stared at Maya, tried to keep her voice steady. Maya, how long were you under there? Maya's lips trembled. I don't know. It's dark. He says time doesn't matter. Elena's hands curled into fists. Forensics mapped the crawl space beneath the house. But it wasn't crawl space. It was a constructed room, reinforced, insulated. A fan system routed through the walls to mask sound. A trap door hidden under a rug and nailed board. A place built for one purpose, to keep someone hidden and alive. And when the forensic team opened a second panel deeper inside the underground room, they found something that made even Detective Rayner go pale. Not a body. Worse. Evidence. Small items sealed in plastic. A pink hair tie. A child's sneaker. A cheap bracelet with letters spelling Lily. Rayner spoke quietly to Elena. We had a Lily Carter go missing 6 years ago. Elena's mouth went dry. 6 years. Rayner nodded, eyes fixed on the evidence bags. This house wasn't empty, Morales. It was operating. Apollo, lying beside Elena with his injured shoulder bandaged, lifted his head. He sniffed the air and whined, softly, like he was mourning something he couldn't bring back. The suspect's name was Graham Voss. No major record. A handyman. A helpful guy who fixed fences, cleared gutters, did odd jobs. The kind of man people described as quiet, harmless. But detectives pulled old reports, small complaints that never went anywhere. A woman once called about a van parked outside her daughter's school. No plate number, no proof, just a bad feeling. Another neighbor reported seeing Voss near the Wicker House at night. Cops checked once, found nothing, because the entrance wasn't visible unless you knew where to look. And now, with Maya safe, the town asked the same question Elena couldn't stop hearing in her own head. How did nobody notice? Rayner interviewed Maya later at the hospital with a child advocate present. Elena waited outside the room with Apollo, hand resting on his neck. You could feel Apollo's exhaustion in the way his breathing slowed, then caught, then slowed again, like his body was still trying to decide if it was allowed to relax. Rayner finally stepped out. His face was controlled, but his eyes had changed. She says he took her from the park, Rayner murmured. Kept her under that house, fed her, talked to her like she was property. Elena felt her stomach twist. Rayner exhaled. But there's more. Elena looked up sharply. Rayner's voice lowered. Maya said he told her stories about other kids, names, details. Elena's throat tightened. Were they real? Rayner didn't answer immediately. Then, we're running the names now. He paused, glancing down at Apollo. And your dog, he's the reason we have a living witness. Elena swallowed hard. Apollo knew. Rayner nodded once. Yeah, he did. A week later, the town held a press conference. Cameras, microphones, the mayor trying to speak like hope wasn't fragile. They announced Maya would recover physically. They announced Graham Voss would face charges that could bury him forever. But the real moment, the one nobody expected, was when Maya's parents walked onto the steps. Her mother looked like a person who hadn't slept in years, not days. Her father's hands shook as he spoke. Then Maya stepped forward, small, wrapped in a sweater too big for her, and she looked into the crowd until her eyes landed on Apollo. Apollo stood beside Elena, wearing a simple black harness. When Maya saw him, her face changed. That tight, haunted expression loosened. She walked, slowly at first, then faster, until she was standing right in front of him. Elena started to say, careful, but Maya didn't touch his injury. She just crouched and pressed her forehead gently to Apollo's. Apollo didn't flinch. He closed his eyes. And for the first time since Harlow Street, his body looked peaceful. Maya whispered something only Elena could hear. Thank you for hearing me. Elena felt tears sting her eyes, sudden and hot, because in that house, under that floor, Maya had been a secret, and Apollo had refused to let a secret stay buried. People like to believe evil is obvious, that it looks like a monster, that it announces itself, that it lives far away from quiet streets and familiar faces. But sometimes it wears a work jacket. Sometimes it smiles at neighbors. Sometimes it hides under the floorboards of a house everyone stopped looking at. And if a dog, trained, loyal, relentless, had not scratched at that exact place, Maya's story might have ended in silence. So if you take anything from this, let it be this. Pay attention to what tries to get your attention. A sound that doesn't belong. A detail that doesn't fit. A dog that won't stop staring at one spot, like it's holding a truth in its teeth. Because some truths don't rise on their own. Sometimes they have to be dug out. If the story stayed with you, if you felt that moment when Apollo scratched and something scratched back, tell me in the comments what you think you would have done if you were Elena standing in that living room. And I genuinely want to know, have you ever had a dog act strange around a place or a person like they sensed something you didn't? If you want more true style cinematic K9 and police stories like this, hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you think. And stay close, because the next story I'm working on starts with a single missing glove and ends with discovery that still keeps a detective awake at night. See you in the next one.